Okay, so just to recap what we have done so far, we finished this section, right? So it's called a simple map to get started, and that's really what we've done. We've gotten started, and we've just basically constructed this very simple map, but it's a very important map because what we've done is we've taken our original kind of raw data source stored as GeoJSON. We've converted it to a data container, and then we've used a grammar of graphics to actually draw each and every individual polygon. Now, based on that foundation, in this next section, which is called applying color, we're going to do just that. We're going to start to play around with some of the channels or some of the visual variables that are available to us beyond kind of the position or the positional aesthetics. And what we're going to do in this section is our task is to get to this stage. What we want to do is we want to use the region name. There's fewer regions than there are planning areas, so we want to check which region is this planning area in, and based on that we want to give this a particular color. Now, of course, we need to put some thought in how do we actually assign that color, which color do we choose, and for this you can also reference the reading for this week, namely the chapter 10 from the Munzner book, which is called Map Color and Other Channels. And importantly, it talks about basically encoding color, hue, saturation, and luminance, and then specifically also makes this distinction between what she calls here categorical color maps and ordered color maps. And then the ordered color maps, they fall apart into sequential and diverging. For now, since the region name in and of itself is kind of like a category, we can't say one region is higher or better than another region, we are looking for a categorical color map. Now, how does that work in kind of the context of JavaScript? As we already alluded to in class, D3 has a skill library, which we've already used quite a bit, but it also has kind of a companion color skill library, and that has available for us various colors. All of these colors, or I think most of them, come from Cynthia Brewer's work, and part of what she has done is she's created this utility that you might be familiar with, which is called Color Brewer, and which is kind of a nice go-to place if you're just looking for a particular color scheme and you don't want to put too much time into choosing one, but you want to have something that's well researched, so it's well understandable, etc., for a broad array of people. These color schemes available through this website called colorbrewer2.org are made available to us in kind of a structure that is easy to work with in this package called D3 Scale Chromatic. And we can see, if we scroll down here, we have categorical color schemes, and we also have diverging, and then ultimately we'll see we have sequential color schemes. We're going to start with the diverging color schemes, and I think for this particular exercise we'll choose the scheme accent color scheme. We'll see that in a bit once we actually get going. Then second important is that so far what we've done is we've used the kind of linear skills available in the D3 skill package. But now what we want to do is we are not actually mapping, let's say, some continuous variable to some position on the x-axis, but rather we are mapping a discrete category to a discrete color. And to do that, we need to use not a continuous skill, but something that's kind of misnomed in D3, which is in D3 called ordinal skills. And I guess that's because you can use these both for categorical and for ordinal data. But we'll stick with the ordinal data for now. So we're going to use this new skill called skill ordinal to do this. So those are the two kind of changing ingredients that we're going to use. Now, once we have that set up, the steps we're going to run through are actually relatively straightforward. We need to set up our ordinal color scale, and we're going to use the domain from the region column, and we'll see that in a bit what that looks like. And we're going to set the range based on the scheme accent color scheme. And then once we've done that, we're going to set the fill property of the polygons. So far, all of the polygons, as we can see here, they're the same color. They're by default, they're black. But what we want to do is we want to basically check the region, apply the color scale, and then use whatever color comes out of that color scale. So that's the kind of theoretical or conceptual steps. So let's actually put this in practice. What we're going to do is we're going to use the end result of the previous section as a starting point. For this section, what I've done is I've opened this sandbox, I've downloaded it, and I've set it up on my local host so that it's available here. So this should be pretty recognizable to you now. We have the imports, we have that planning area, data container, and then we had created this geoscale that we then spread on the graphic, and within the graphic we have the polygon layer. So far it just has the geometry, so that's the actual shape of each planning area. It has a white stroke and the stroke width is 1. So that's what we're actually seeing here on the right. I am going to go into my terminal and just type npm run dev, so we have a live development server once that's loaded. There we go. And let's refresh this. Yeah, so now we are live, and then when we make some changes we should see them appear live as well. Just a quick check first is we have this data container here, and that is the actual data that we have available to us. As you remember, we're currently only using this geometry key here. Let me see if I can make that a little bigger. There we go. We're only using this geometry key right here, but there's a bunch of other things, and what we're going to use is this column here that is called region_n in all caps. And you can see here that there's different values. There's northeast region, there's east region, there's central region, etc. So how are we going to use that particular column to color each and every polygon? To do that, what we need to do is we need to construct a new scale. So we not only have this geoscale, but we're also now constructing a color scale. So I'm gonna say, let's just call it my color scale, just to keep consistent with that my geoscale. And that color scale, we want to use this new scaling function that we already have pre-imported here from D3 -scale. So I'm going to use that. And then similarly to the linear scale, we want to run that function, and the result of that function, we want to set the domain to the actual domain of the regions. And remember, with a categorical variable, the domain will actually return all of the unique entries in that variable. So if I do what is it, planning areas dot domain, and then the domain we want is that region n, that should return all of the unique values in there. You can always double check that, of course, if we just console log and then we do that same thing just to make sure that I'm doing this right, and I save this, then there we go, right? So here we see there's 5 regions: northeast, east, central, west, north. All right, so that looks about right. So I'm just going to delete this so we keep this a little clean. Now here's the thing. So far, when we have constructed scales, we have only given a scale a domain, because that's the data space, if you will. And the actual range of the scale, so what is it translating to, right? It's translating from the data space to some kind of pixel space for positional scales. That is actually kind of added to it once we add it to the graphic or the section, because only there we actually know which pixels we want to kind of operate within. For color, that's a little bit different because it's not positional, and we can actually immediately apply the range as well, and the range is going to tell basically to the scale, translate from the domain, from the regions, to a series of colors, and you can put these colors in by hand. So you could actually put here an array that says red, red, blue, etc. But you could also put an entire color scheme, and here we have that scheme accent. So we can actually just copy that and feed that to the range. Now, if you're curious what that scheme accent actually looks like, I think we can just console log that and have a look. So that's always the answer. If you're a little confused as to what you're actually doing, just console log it so you get a sense. So here you can see the scheme accent actually has 8 colors, and these are the hex representations of those colors. So that's what is now being fed to the range here. And what's going to happen, we have 8 colors available, we only have 5 regions, so we'll only use actually the first 5 of those colors. So we could potentially kind of scale up to 8 regions with this. Now, once we have this and we have this scale, what the result of this is, we have a scale, it's actually a function. When we feed a particular value, a particular region name into this color scale, it's going to return to us the appropriate color. So we can actually test that if we wanted to before we apply it in our graphic. So I always forget the exact spelling of these. So for example, let's say we want to know what the color belongs to the northeast region. What we could do is we could console log, and then what we want to console log is the color scale, and we're going to input as a string that value. And what this should return is an actual hex color value that should be, let me close this, that should be one of these 8 colors. So let's actually see if that works. There you go. So in this case, the northeast region is this 7FC97F color. We'll see soon enough what actual color that is. All right, so we have a color scale. It actually works, so that's great. Now what we need to do is we need to somehow use that color scale here to apply fill color to the polygon layer. Now again, if we would go to the documentation, we would see that the polygon has a number of aesthetic properties. So far we've played around with the stroke and the stroke width, and here we also have the fill. As you can see, by default it is this 000, which is the hex representation of black. We can also give it a named color, so for example white or red or blue, or RGB notation. It's quite flexible in that sense. So that's the property we want to use. So fill equals, and then I'm going to use some kind of logic here. So I'm going to open and close Svelte's curly braces so that we can use JavaScript. But now the question is, how do we actually assign a different color to each and every polygon? And the trick to that is that here for the geometry, we just take an entire column, geometry, and we extract all of the values, right? So it returns an array of all of the values for each of the planning areas. But if we just do that in the same way for the region, they're not colors yet. So what we actually need to do is we need to map over each and every value, each and every region value, and apply this color scale. And the data container contains a nice kind of convenience tool for that, which is called map. And just to show you that on the README here, so basically we can, when we have a data container, we can use the map method, and there's 2 arguments to it, the column name and then some kind of function. And we have that function already. It's actually our color scale function. So let's actually try that out. So what we should be able to do is we should be able to type planning areas, and then we want to map And what do we want to map over? Well, we want to map over that region underscore n column, and for each and every value within that column, we want to apply the myColorScale function. And that, once I hit save, there we go. So here we see the 5 different blending areas all get nice and different color. Now, if you wanted to use a different color scheme, all you would need to do is basically change out this scheme accent here, just to show you that. Let's say we go back to the D3 scale chromatic page, and let's say we wanted to use something a little bit more, I don't know, let's say this one. We just copy that name, we import that one instead, and we set the range from scheme accent to that scheme category 10. Once I save, the colors will update. And that's the first section.